Hello students, welcome to your English class. This is Neelam Bajaj, your English teacher. Today we are going to start a new chapter of the book Flamingo of class 12th. The name of the chapter is Lost Spring. This is second chapter of the book. Here Lost Spring is a story about the stolen childhood of poor children. First, before starting the story, we will know something about the author of the story. Anis Jung was born in Rourkela in 1964, who is the author of the story, and spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and in the United States of America. Her parents were both writers. Anis Jung began her career as a writer in India. She has been an editor and columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad and has authored several books. The following is an excerpt from her book titled Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood. Here she analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which condemn these children to a life of exploitation. So, with the title of the story, Lost Spring, we understand that this story is about the stolen childhood of poor people. Childhood is the time of spring, according to the writer, which is stolen from these poor children due to poverty. Before coming to the text part of the story, we will have a brief introduction first of the chapter. The story Lost Spring, written by Anis Jung, revolves around the pitiable condition of poor children who are forced to live in slums and work hard in very dirty conditions. The story is divided into two parts. The first part tells us the writer's impression about the life of poor rag pickers who have migrated from Bangladesh but are now settled in the Simapuri area of Delhi. The second part narrates the miserable life of the bangle makers in the town of Firozabad. The story talks about the miserable life of the two children whose spring or childhood is lost in misery and poverty. Now we are coming to the story. In this story, first I will give you some more introduction about the story. The title of this first part is Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage. Here, the author watches a rag picker named Sahib who searches the garbage heaps for some coins and other things to sustain his living. Sahib and his family were Bangladeshi migrants. They migrated from Bangladesh to India due to poverty and in search of some livelihood. He is unable to study due to lack of schools in his neighborhood. There were a number of rag pickers like Sahib and all of them were barefoot. Barefoot, they were not wearing anything in their feet, they were without any shoes or something. It was more of a tradition for rag pickers to remain barefoot. They used it as an excuse to conceal, to hide their poverty, that it is their tradition to remain barefoot. That's why they don't wear anything in their feet. They have no means to wear shoes, though they desire to possess a pair. Simapuri in Delhi is a heaven for rag pickers. Why it is heaven? The author feels that for children, garbage is a mysterious gift because they try to find something precious like coins, a 1 rupee or 10 rupee note, and sometimes more precious thing than that. And in that curiosity, they take the rags every day. For the elders, it is just a means of survival. But for elders, the rag picking work is just a means of survival to earn their livelihood so that they can earn some money. Now the text part. First question by the author from that poor boy Sahib. Why do you do this? I ask Sahib, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold. Scrounging here means searching for gold. Gold means some precious thing like coins, notes, etc. in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. So here author means to say she watches every day a boy trying to find something in the garbage dumps of her neighborhood. So one day she asks him, why does he do this work? Set amidst the green fields, Sahib left his home long ago. Now she is telling the story of Sahib's past. Sahib left his home long ago, set amidst the green fields of Dhaka. His home is not even a distant memory. So he does not remember anything about his home in Dhaka, which his family left many years ago, which was among the green fields of Dhaka. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes, his mother tells him. This is the reason why they left home, Dhaka, and came here as migrants in India. That's why they left looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. And here, author means to say that's why they left Bangladesh and came to India as migrants, and here they are working as rag pickers. Looking for gold means they are working as rag pickers, and this way they are earning their livelihood. I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. This is the answer of Sahib on author's question that he has nothing else to do except rag picking, and he says this in a very low tone, muttering and looking somewhere else while he is speaking to author. Go to school, I say glibly. Glibly, cleverly, which means she tries to ignore the fact that he cannot go to school, and she is advising him emptily, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. And she immediately realizes after giving this advice that her advice is very empty, useless. There is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I will go. This is answer of Sahib that there is no school in his neighborhood in Simapuri where he lives, and when the government builds one, he will go. If I start a school, will you come? I ask, half joking. This is author's question to him, which is not so seriously asked. That's why she is saying half joking that if I start a school, will you come? Yes, he says, smiling broadly. He becomes happy to listen to this and gives his answer in assertive tone. A few days later, I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? It takes longer to build a school, I say, embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. So, as out of his childishness, when Sahib asks her, is her school ready? She feels embarrassed as she did a fake promise to him which was not meant at all, which was not true. But promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world, of his cheerless world, of his unhappy world. So she accepts this fact also that the promise she made to him was the part of Sahib's life, Sahib's unhappy life. Everywhere she finds these kind of promises done by various people which are never meant to be fulfilled. After months of knowing him, I ask him his name. Sahib-e-Alam, he announces. He does not know what it means. If he knew its meaning, Lord of the Universe, this is the meaning of his name, he would have a hard time believing it. Unaware of what his name represents, he roams the streets with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appear like the morning birds and disappear at noon. Over the months, I have come to recognize each of them. Now, further in the story, we come to know about another facts of their life, the rag picker's life. After months of knowing him, after many months, she remembers to ask his name, and he tells his name Sahib-e-Alam, which means Lord of the Universe. So she is thinking about it that if she happens to tell him the meaning of this name, he would never believe it. As unaware of what his name represents, what his name means, he is roaming in the street with his other ragpicker friends, It is like an army of barefoot boys who do not wear anything in their feet, who appear like the morning birds. As morning birds appear every day and disappear in noon, same way these boys appear in groups in the morning time, and in afternoon they are not seen anywhere in the city. Over the months, the writer knows each and every one of that group, and now she is talking to them. Why aren't you wearing chappals? I ask one. My mother did not bring them down from the shelf. He answers simply. This is one of the boys of Sahib's group who is answering to author's question on why he is not wearing chappals. So he answers that his mother has kept in the shelf of his house and she does not give him to wear it. Even if she did, he will throw them off. This is the answer of the another boy from the group. Adds another who is wearing shoes that do not match. He is wearing different shoes in both the foot. I want shoes, says a third boy, who has never owned a pair of shoes all his life, so he wants to wear the shoes. Traveling across the country, I have seen children walking barefoot in cities, on villages, roads. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot is one explanation. So here author is telling us her experience while traveling across this country. She has seen children walking barefoot everywhere in the country, India, and they give this explanation that it is their tradition to remain barefoot. Not they give that reason that they have lack of money and they cannot purchase the shoes, and they give it the name of tradition. I wonder if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual, a continuous state of poverty. So she thinks over it that this is a kind of excuse which they give to hide their poverty. I remember a story a man from Udupi once told me. As a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. In the backyard where lived the new priest. So here author is telling another story in this rag picker story, that she remembers an incident when a man from Udupi told her about his childhood story, that when he was very small and used to go to school, he used to stop at a temple where his father was a priest, and he used to pray every day for a pair of shoes because he did not have any. And after 30 years, when author visits that area again, she sees that now the temple is in neglected condition, and in the backyard of that temple where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs now. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived panting, breathing hard, and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. The goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many others like the rag pickers in my neighborhood remained shoeless. In this paragraph, the author describes that when after 30 years again she visited that village and she saw a new priest there, and his son was wearing a pair of shoes, she feels that the prayer done 30 years ago by that small boy was accepted by the goddess, and now the priest's son is able to wear shoes. But she also feels that the others like rag pickers in my neighborhood, in her neighborhood, remain shoeless still. My acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Simapuri. So her knowing to the boys who are roaming barefoot every day makes her curious to see the area where they live. So she went to Simapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically. Here, this lines means that although that place is near the metropolitan city and capital of the country like Delhi, but metaphorically, if we see it, the living conditions of Simapuri does not match at all to the living condition of the normal Delhi people. So she is saying it that it is yet it is near to Delhi but miles away from it metaphorically. Those who live here are squatters. Squatters are the people who occupy some space without any permission. So these Bangladeshi migrants are called squatters here, who occupied that Simapuri area without the permission of government, who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. Sahib's family is among them. Simapuri was then a wilderness, an empty area completely. It still is, but it is no longer empty now. It is still a wilderness. That means no basic amenities or facilities are still available there for the people living there. In structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage, or running water, live 10,000 rag pickers. So that is why she is saying it is still can be called a wilderness, because there are no basic facilities of even sewage, drainage, or running water is available for 10,000 rag pickers who are living there, and they are living in the structures of in the houses of mud with roof tins. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity. They do not have any identity. They do not have any identity kind of symbol with them, without permits but with ration cards that get their names on voters list and enable them to buy grain. So only they have ration cards. After 30 years they are able to gain ration cards for them, which give them some kind of identity and which can provide them with rations and written their name in the voters list. Food is more important for survival than an identity. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. Say a group of women in tattered saris when I asked them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers. So when other asked this question why they left that beautiful place of Dhaka, this was their answers, that if we are finding food every day and we can sleep peacefully in a bed, there is no need of any other identity want by us. Whenever they find food, they pitch their wherever they find food, they pitch their tents that become transit homes. So wherever they are able to find food at any place, they make their temporary houses there, where they can shift somewhere else anytime. Children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival, becoming partners in making the livelihood with them by doing odd jobs like rag picking. When their children grow up, they start doing the same works which they are doing. And survival in Simapuri means rag picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. So after many years, the author is feeling that that area has taken the shape of a fine art. Garbage to them is gold, because they are sometimes able to find some precious thing among the garbage dumps. It is their daily bread, a roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof, but for a child it is even more. So although they have leaking roofs and mud houses, but still they are able to find some livelihood to survive there. So it is very precious thing for them. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note, Sahib says, his eyes lighting up. When you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging, you don't stop searching, for there is hope of finding more. It seems that for children, Garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. For the children, it is wrapped in wonder. For the elders, it is a means of survival. So, this is a very important paragraph in terms of the concept of this chapter, which tells us that garbage to these small children is like a gold for them. It is not a means of survival as it is for elders. It is a wonder wrapped up. So here Sahib is telling this truth to Author why he is curious every day to find the rags from that garbage drum. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note. He accepts this fact, and that is why he is very eager every day to go and find something there. And while saying this, his eyes lighting up. And here Author says that when you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop searching. You keep on searching to find more and more. For there is hope of finding more. Now we are coming to the next paragraph. One winter morning, I see Sahib standing by the fenced gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. I like the game. He hums. He is saying in a singing tone that he likes the game. Content to watch it standing behind the fence. Content, satisfied to watch that game from the distance. He is happy to see that game from the distance and he likes the game, he admits. And Author sees this thing when he is standing near a fence of a neighborhood club watching the game of two men dressed in white. I go inside when no one is around, he admits. Further, he tells the Author that he goes inside the club when no one is there. He admits, he accepts this. The gatekeeper lets me use the swing. The swing is also there in the club, and the gatekeeper allows him to use the swing when no one is there. Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts as he is poor. Someone gave them to me, he says, in the manner of an explanation. He explains when Author looks to his shoes, he explains to Author that these are given by someone to him. The fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them does not bother him. So this is the reality for the poor boys like Sahib, that although there is a hole in one shoe, but it does not bother him, and they are actually discarded. That pair of shoes are actually discarded by some rich boy and he is happy to wear them. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. This is another fact. But the game he is watching so intently, so curiously, is out of his reach. That he can own somebody's second hand shoes, but he cannot own that costly game like tennis. He can look to it from the distance and enjoy it, but never can dream of playing it. This morning, Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. Now, the turning point in Sahib's life, Author is telling us in this paragraph that one morning she saw him on the way to milk booth. In his hand is a still canister. I now work in a tea stall down the road, he says. Now he tells the Author that now he has stopped rack picking work and stopped doing rack picking work. Now he is doing work at a tea stall down the road, and that is why he is going to take milk from the milk booth one morning, taking a container in his hand. He says, pointing in the distance, I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. He is pointing towards the tea stall and saying the Author that now he is paid 800 rupees. That is a better money earned by him now than earlier with the rack picking work, and all my meals, all his meals also he is able to gain from the owner of the tea stall, except that monthly salary of 800 rupees. Does he like the job? I ask. His face, I see, has lost the carefree look. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulder. The bag was his, The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Sahib is no longer his own master. This is the end of the first part of the story, and in this last paragraph, the author is telling us a bitter fact that although now he is earning better than earlier, but now he has lost his carefree look, and the heaviness of the canister seems more than that plastic bag which he used to carry so lightly. It was lighter for him than this canister, because that time the bag belonged to him, but this canister which he is carrying now does not belong to him, it belongs to his master. So now Sahib is no longer his own master, now he has become a kind of slave to somebody, he has lost his carefree life. This is the fact about almost all the poor people in the world, that because of their poverty they are bound to work under somebody in unhappy conditions, and they do not have any other option except than these. We are completing this part here only. Next we are coming with the next part. Till then, thank you.